تبسم تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر.
السلام عليكم ورحمة الله تعالى وبركاته. إن أصدق الحديث كتاب الله تعالى وخير الهدي هدي محمد صلى الله عليه وآله وسلم، وشر الأمور محدثاتها، وكل محدثة بدعة، وكل بدعة ضلالة، وكل ضلالة في النار. This was the hadith of Sayyidina Rasulullah صلى الله عليه وآله. Since أصدق الحديث كتاب الله, let's talk about كتاب الله. أعوذ بالله من الشيطان الرجيم. بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم. والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر إلا الذين آمنوا وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. Hey, this ayah basically summarizes the whole life mission of the human being. Al-Quran al-Kareem doesn't just speak بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن المسلمين لفي خسر. No, bigger than that. المؤمنين, bigger than that. إن الإنسان, the whole insan is indeed at loss. يعني otherwise you're wasting your breath if you're a human being. Generally, you're wasting your life if you're a human being. Generally, most people spend their whole life in a spiritual coma. They're lost. They don't know where from, where to, and why. These are questions that must be always asked, so we understand where do we fit in this frame of dunya. طبعا الأنبياء gave us the answers. Where to, where from, where to, why. لكن القرآن الكريم comes to say بسم الله الرحمن الرحيم والعصر إن الإنسان لفي خسر. The human being is indeed at loss, in total absenteeism. Doesn't realize. But there's an exception. Who can figure this whole question out? إلا الذين آمنوا. But not only آمنوا by itself. وعملوا الصالحات. Not only وعملوا الصالحات وتواصوا بالحق وتواصوا بالصبر. And those who surrounded around the haqq, they believed, they did good deeds, and they allied themselves around the truth, the haqq. But not only that, Allah ends the ayah by saying وتواصوا بالصبر. Haqq and sabr. Why? Okay, I understand I have to believe. I understand I have to do good deeds. Amal salih. I understand I need to be with the haqq, not with the batil. What does this sabr have to do with the whole business now? What is the business of sabr? Of being patient with all these things. It is very simple. If you are around the haqq, haqq usually is unpopular. And therefore, you're going to need sabr to remain on the haqq. Without patience, there is no way you can be with the haqq. Those who are impatient are not with the haqq. For haqq requires sacrifice. And sacrifice is painful. And painful sacrifice requires sabr on the command of Allah. That's why when Ibrahim alayhi salam saw the dream, he put his son forward. Don't you think that requires tawasaw bil haqq? Both of them, Ibrahim and Ismail, and then tawasaw bil sabr. One who became patient on doing what he had to do, and the other one who was patient on receiving the order of Allah. Ya abati fa'al ma tu'mar. Oh Father, do what you were ordered to do. Satajiduni insha'Allahu minas sabirin. You will find me among those who are patient. It is not important or as important to know how many children did Al-Imam Al-Hussein radiyallahu anhu had. It is not as important to know the name of his 3 wives that he had. It is not important to know when he was born, as important to know when he was born and when did he give martyrdom. These are important, but it is not as important. What is important is that you have your heart rhythm in tandem and synchronization with Al-Hussein. Because you could know all the information you have and there is, but your heart is singing a Yazidi melody. And with the Yazidi melody, no matter how much information you have, it will never lead to ma'rifah or realization. That information will always be misinformation versus transformation. Al-Hussein's information transformed him into Sayyidu Shababi Ahli al-Jannah, the masters of the youth of Ahli al-Jannah. That's called transformation. It's not called information. What is important is to realize that Al-Hussein radiallahu ta'ala anhu was no stranger to the line of Anbiya, was no stranger to the line of Yahya alayhi salam, and was no stranger to the line of Zakaria alayhi salam, and was no stranger to the line of the Anbiya before him, and was no stranger to Nuh, was no stranger to Ismail, was no stranger to Yusuf, the son of Yaqub. Until today, oftentimes still people say, Inna lahu lahafidhun, and then they slaughter his neck. Wa inna lahu lanasihun, and they want to dilute his mention, as if the mere seerah and the mere name of Al-Imam Al-Hussein still irritates those people who want to throw him in the well. The iman that is connected directly to the Quran and Sunnah. Make no mistakes, my dear brothers and sisters. Today, when we remember Al-Imam Al-Hussein radiyallahu ta'ala anhu wa ardah, I don't remember Ashura and human beings being slaughtered. No. I remember Al-Quran being slaughtered, and the Sunnah being slaughtered, and that Nabawi Sunnah replaced by another Sunnah, and the instructions of the book replaced by different rules for admitting the book. Al-Hussein lived in a time where he had no way but to lead an intellectual, academic, spiritual, social, and scientific revolution. I'm going to say this again, because there is a misunderstanding that Al-Hussein was trying to lead an armed, violent revolution. Make no mistake about the message and the revolution of Al-Hussein. The revolution of Al-Hussein was 100% founded on non-violence. Al-Hussein is a revolution where the word overcame the sword. And the power of logic was much stronger than the logic of power. Al-Hussein was about the power of logic, was not about the logic of power. Al-Hussein's in Karbala and in Ashura, that's where the word won over the blood. The logic of killing and violence may have killed Al-Hussein, but Al-Hussein's message resonated and filled the whole dunya with every honorable blood drop that went on that soil of Karbala. Al-Hussein was not a person who leads violent movement, so he brings on suffering and misery to the people. Al-Hussein had a simple message: go back to the book and go back to the sunnah of my grandfather sallallahu ta'ala alayhi wa ala alihi wa sallam. For non-violence is the weapon that knows no defeat, and violence is the language of the inarticulate. But our deen is the most articulate of deens. And our faith is the most articulate of faiths. And our Nabi is the most articulate of any human being Allah created. By his own saying, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, al-Bukhari narrates it, Utitu jawami al-kalim. I was given the gift of articulation. Al-Hussein is not a story. Al-Hussein is your story. He lived in a time where the ruler was a tyrant man. We do not slander people, even if they're tyrant. What do you mean? We're not people who curse and slander. That's not the way of Ahlul Sunnah. We people who disagree, and even when we disagree, we're non-violent in our disagreement. I'm talking about two kinds of violence, verbal and actual. There's two kinds of violence. There's two kinds of terrorism, verbal and actual. It's not about Yazid. I hate to mention the name on the minbar, but I just did that, and the last time I'll mention that, inshallah. Like Al-Hussein is living in a time where the Sunnah is being changed. Jaharan naharan, flat out, blatantly. Where the kursi of Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, the chair of Khilafah, that like honorable people sat on, like Sayyidina Abu Bakr as-Siddiq, wa Sayyidina Umar ibn al-Khattab, wa Sayyidina Uthman, wa Sayyidina Ali, now is occupied by a person who doesn't even arrive at anything even remotely close to them. Where people's freedoms and civil liberties were rolled back, so you can't even say, and if you were to dare even to mention the Sunnah, if you were to dare to mention the Sunnah of Rasulullah, the Sunnah, then you are subject to being killed. The hadith fil Bukhari, Abu Hurairah radiallahu anhu tells us that if I tell you what Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam tells me, they will kill me. Atmospheres of fear, atmospheres of ruling people by fear, atmospheres of terrorism, atmospheres of political tyranny, religious tyranny. And religious tyranny is worse than political tyranny, I always say. Why? Because political tyranny just kills you, and if they don't like you, they put you in jail. Religious tyranny, if they don't like you, they tell you you're kafir or mushrik or all these things, and then that's what intellectual terrorism is, which leads to killing you. Political tyranny may waive your rights and may do all these things to you, but they have no apologies. They won't apologize about it. Religious tyranny will do everything, will steal your money and rob your iman and rob your even faith and rob your time from you and rob your money from you, all under the name of God. That's right. That's why Al-Imam Al-Hussein had to stand for the Risala. It's not simply because of a political tyranny only. No. It is because of this unholy matrimony that gathered political tyranny with religious tyranny and put the Quran and the very Sunnah under siege and replaced it by a parallel Sunnah and a parallel deen. That's why Imam Hussein had to stand. It's not because of a chair that someone like Yazid sits on. It's not because of a might or a political influence that Al-Hussein was seeking. Al-Hussein doesn't need to be seeking political influence. Al-Hussein has a heart influence directly to every believer. There is no need for him to be liked by a political group versus the other. Because Al-Husayn's love is in the heart of all the mu'mineen, from the beginning till the day of Qiyamah, and in all the malaika who love Al-Husayn, and all the awliya Allah salihin, from the human beings and the jinn and the malaika and the trees and everything that Allah created has that love for Al-Husayn. Al-Husayn doesn't look for a couple of pieces of wood put together to form a chair. Al-Husayn looks to restore the message of his grandfather. Al-Islam did not send people a message to be humiliated. Al-Islam did not tell people you need to live on your knees in life. No. Islam wants you to stand up on your feet and look up. You're a mu'min. Al-Izzah to you after Allah and His Messenger. Al-Islam did not come to enslave people under the name of politics or religion. Religion came not to enslave people. Religion came to free people. The book of Allah and the sunnah of Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam came to set you free. Why? Because came to increase your knowledge, and knowledge sets you free. Those chains and those metals, shackles that they put around Imam Zayn al-Abidin or Imam Abu Hanifa after that, or other Aimma, or these people, those shackles that they put around the neck of Zayn al-Abidin after they massacred his father, those pieces of metals and those chains that were of iron, those are medal honors for humanity to come. They're medals of freedom, and medals of dignity, and medals of sacrifice. Don't ever think that shackles can enslave the minds of the free. Don't ever think that chains can enslave the soul of the pious and of the awliya of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. All the chains in the world will never be able to even set a limit to them. They tried to silence Al-Husayn through media terrorism at that time. So the establishment media, they had to call him names. And then one day that did not work. They had to kill him. Allah sent the message and then took the oath on those who follow the messenger sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, that they try to restore this deen to its original way of the Quran and the authentic sunnah. I'm saying authentic, and I want to put 3 lines under authentic, so we don't give our people falsehoods, and we don't give our people fairy tales and stories about all these things, and here under the very name of the sunnah. So we don't give them stories about our shuyukh and our figures and prioritize those traditions over the tradition of Rasulullah himself sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. That would not be deen. That would not be deen. That's a deen they made. That's the parallel Yazidi deen still. The deen is when Allah says something or Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says something, that's the end of discussion. Bismillah ar-Rahman ar-Rahim. Man yuti' ar-Rasula faqad ata'a Allah. Wa yusallimu taslima. فَلَا وَرَبِّكَ. They will not be believers until what? Until they come and listen to you, Ya Rasulullah, and they submit entirely. وَيُسَلِّمُوا تَسْلِيمًا. Not just submit, but submit entirely, completely. Al-awliya were given an oath to follow the way of the anbiya. You know, one of the poets said, لَقَدْ كَانَ فَوْتُ الْمَوْتِ سَهْلًا. Huh? If Al-Hussein wanted to miss out on his meeting with death, oh, that would have been easy. All he had to do is give his hand. Huh? لَقَدْ كَانَ فَوْتُ الْمَوْتِ سَهْلًا. Bypassing this meeting with death would have been very easy. All he had to do is say, Maulana, we also, mashallah, you're very good, mashallah. Huh? فَرَدَّهُ إِلَيْهِ الْحِفَاظُ الْمُرِّ وَالْخُلُقُ الْوَعْرُ. But then what brought Al-Hussein back face to face with death is that oath that he gave to his grandfather Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wasallam, by being that Muslim and by being that wali of Allah. Huh? And if Al-Hussein is not a wali of Allah, then there's no wali of Allah on earth. Huh? وَالْخُلُقُ الْوَعْرُ. And what brought him back to face death face to face is that fine ethics, fine set of akhlaq and morality, that was ingrained, that his clay, or his nur, if I may say, rather than his clay, because he's the nur from the nur of the Mustafa sallallahu alaihi wasallam, that his nur was made from. It was mixed with the highest akhlaq and the most pure of characteristics. فَرَدَّهُ إِلَيْهِ الْحِفَاظُ الْمُرُّ وَالْخُلُقُ الْوَعْرُ. He says, وَنَفْسٌ تَعَافُ الضَّيْمِ حَتَّى كَأَنَّمَا هُوَ الْكُفْرُ يَوْمَ الرَّوْعِ أَوْ دُونَهُ الْكُفْرُ. He said, and what made him go back to face death is a nafs that he had. The nafs of Al-Hussein, which is a nafs that ta'afu daym, a nafs that is disgusted by indignities, is disgusted by those who practice enslavement of people under the name of religion, or under the name of politics, or under any name. He had within his cage, within his ribs, a nafs that was disgusted from those who try to peddle enslavement. وَنَفْسٌ تَعَافُ الضَّيْمِ حَتَّى كَأَنَّمَا هُوَ الْكُفْرُ يَوْمَ الرَّوْعِ. As if these indignities are kufr to him, or even kufr is less than that. Huh? That's right. Yes, my dear beloved brothers, Al-Hussein's message is to revive the deen, not to parrot what the political tyranny that has married without an actual nikah contract, the religious tyranny. It's a message to revive the deen, to polish all these chains off, dust all that things that they tried to put on the book and the authentic sunnah, so you don't see the book and the Quran and the authentic sunnah. You see what he said and what she said and what he wants to do and what the other wants to do. By the time you get to the book and sunnah, you'll already be long dead. You'll never get there. We'll make sure we won't let you get there. But he went and told them, why don't we come to mediate based on the book and the sunnah? Difficult. The human being, I always say, is like a flower. Every human being is like a flower. The flower needs water, it needs sun, it needs free air coming through. In order for that flower to blossom and smells beautiful and to maximize its potential. And the human being is just like that flower. In order for the human being to blossom in order for that human being to be creative, in order for that human being to give and to contribute, in order for that human being to reach his or her maximal potential, they have to live free like the flower. They have to live free like Al-Hussein. Not those who are shackled with intellectual slavery and mental slavery and economical slavery and religious slavery and political slavery, like the establishment of Yazid then and the establishment of Yazid now. Islam wants you to be free. Huh? Let me finish. My time is up. I took actually more than what I'm supposed to be taking. But despite all that, the revolution of Al-Imam al-Hussein was that of a spiritual nature. It was still offering unconditional compassion to the very criminals and thugs who also had religious looks and titles at that time, yet still offering them unconditional compassion in hoping of their salvation and turning around. Despite the words and the actions they did, Al-Hussein only offered them dua and offered them acceptance and offered them inclusion and unconditional compassion. When they prevented him from water and they prevented his children and infant from water, he gave them whatever he had remaining of water when they became thirsty. Because two wrongs do not make it right. The standard of Al-Hussein or the standard of Awliya ur-Rahman is not even remotely close to the standard of the other kind of awliya, Awliya ul-Shaytan. The Awliya ur-Rahman have a standard, and Awliya ul-Shaytan also have a standard. Karbala was not about a human being's life that was shed, or 72 of the best human beings that have ever walked on earth that was shed. No, no, no. Karbala was about the nur of the Quran that was shed, and the soul of the Sunnah that was being suffocated. Karbala is about that message of freedom that we all need today. That direct connection that you have with Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And the direct connection that every Muslim has with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi wa sallam. Where the religious tyranny and the political tyranny did not want you to have that relationship with Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa alihi. We need to be in the middle so we make sure you don't really get the relationship. Lakin al-Mustafa sallallahu alayhi wa sallam keeps telling you that he is your direct Nabi. And that your deeds are shown to him, sallallahu alayhi wa sallam, as the Hasan Hadith of Al-Bazzar. Your deeds are shown to him. And that when you send him, anyone directly, you send him a salam, he sends you salam back. Directly to you, there is no mediator between you and him. Don't put mediators between you and Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Go back to the Mustafa through his sunnah and through his actions and through his character. Acquire the Muhammadan nur through the Muhammadan soul. You send your salam, he sends the salam back, right back to you, specifically and privately and individually. Sallallahu alayka ya Sayyidi ya Rasulullah. This is the deen that we are part of. This is the deen that tells us we need to go back to the book and sunnah and check and reference and stand corrected when we are wrong. And many times we're wrong. And there's no harm in being wrong for the human being. The harm is when you're stubborn on being wrong. The harm is not making a mistake, because we are all fallible. We are all sinful. That's not the harm. We were created weak, which means the capacity to sin and make mistakes. We are not angels. And those people who try to portray people as angels, they are delusional. Because angels are angels and human beings are human beings. The perfection of the human being is not being an angel where he doesn't make mistakes. That's not the perfection of the human being. Go back to the seerah of your grandfather Adam, who was better than the malaika because he knew what the malaika didn't even know. Yet he made mistake in a sense and he corrected. The perfection of the human being is that Adam line, where when you make a mistake, you don't remain stubborn on the mistake, but you get up, you repent, and you move in the right direction. That's why Adam went from perfection to higher perfection. It's not that you don't make mistakes or you don't choose the less than the better. Huh? If you don't, you're a malaika, you don't belong here, go back to heavens. But if you're a human being, then you make mistakes. And make no mistake about it, your perfection in admitting your mistake and correcting him. That's your perfection. That's how you become better than without having made a mistake. Huh? That without having made a mistake. ثُمَّ جِتَبَاهُ رَبُّهُ فَتَابَ عَلَيْهِ وَهَدَى. After Adam alayhi salam, وَعَصَى آدَمُ رَبَّهُ فَغَوَى. What does Allah say? Adam disobeyed his Lord and he went wrong. What does Allah say? ثُمَّ جِتَبَاهُ. After that, when Adam repented, Allah made him even closer than he was before. You want to follow your grandfather Adam. You don't want to follow people who give you falsehoods and tell you that this is the faith. Our faith is in following the Quran and Sunnah and prioritizing it over any and everything. When An-Nabi sallallahu alayhi wa sallam says something, that is the end of the story. Done? Next line, please. Don't try to twist his words around. Don't try to vacate the meanings of his words. Don't try to disable his words. Don't try to practice censorship over Rasulullah sallallahu alayhi wa sallam. Ya Rasulullah, you cannot say these things. He sallallahu alayhi wa sallam talked about Karbala in the authentic hadith and talked about Al-Hussein in authentic hadith and talked about Ashura in authentic hadith. Who told you we can't talk about them if we are Ahlul Sunnah? Absolutely we can, because the Sunnah talked about them and the people of the Sunnah have no choice but to follow the Sunnah. Those people who want to disable part of the Sunnah and censor Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam are those people who are trying to distort the Sunnah and tell you there is a good Sunnah and there is not so good Sunnah. That's not good for you to know. Ya Rasulullah, there's things that you should not be telling people. Like they are more caring on the Ummah than Rasulullah himself sallallahu alaihi wa alihi. Though Allah told us our Prophet is Haris. Harisun alaykum, azizun alayhi ma'anittum. He's the one who's caring about the ummah most. And he's the one who is kind on the ummah most. Not those people who try to tell themselves that they know about the ummah more than Rasulullah. And they care about the ummah more than Rasulullah. And they are kind on the ummah more than Rasulullah. And they are careful on the future of the ummah more than Rasulullah. No one can do that more than Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. It is time to destroy the idols of the political tyranny and the social tyranny and the religious tyranny and the industrial complexes in each tyranny. When we talk about Imam al-Hussein today, radiyallahu anhu, we're trying to follow the sunnah of his grandfather as we were instructed. Proof, take these ahadith away from the sunnah so that they're not the sunnah. As long as they're there, they're the sunnah and we have to follow. You should not blame us for talking about Al-Hussein wa Ahlul Bayt, because one should not be blamed for spreading the hadith and the sunnah of Rasulullah. The one who ought to be blamed are those who hide those hadith of Rasulullah. But still, let me finish with this. Al-Hussein's revolution was that of non-violence. Non-violence towards the most vile of people. Non-violence towards the most thuggish of people. Al-Hussein proved to us in Ashura and in Karbala that the power of logic overcomes the logic of power. That the power of word is much more overcoming than the power of the sword. And there's a big difference between word and sword. We're people of the word, not people of the sword. We're not people of terrorizing other people, even if they don't believe in our message. We're people of word. Kalima tayyiba. Word. Iqra. Word. I leave you with these thoughts. And talking about this topic is long, long. And we need to examine ourselves and where we stand. And examine our hearts. And having talked about Ahlul Bayt, I don't want to also forget. Otherwise, you know. So we talk about As-Sahaba radiallahu anhum ajma'een. All of them. All of the Sahaba. From 1 to whatever the last number is. From A to Z. We love them all. And we glorify them all. Radiallahu ta'ala anhum. All. So we don't leave space for the merchants of venom. You know what I'm talking about. You talk about Ahlul Bayt. Does that mean you don't like the Sahaba? No, we talk about Ahlul Bayt, we talk about the Sahaba. The Yazidi merchants of venom cannot stand the message of Hussein. It's too liberating. And once you taste freedom, you'll never go back to slavery. And we have tasted freedom from Al-Hussein. We've tasted the Husseini freedom. And once we taste that freedom, we will never go back to slavery again. We will never go back to the intellectual slavery again. We are already free. And there's no power on this earth that can enslave us again. We will speak the truth. In the face of the tyranny that tries to change this deen and alter it. Salvation, the book, the authentic sunnah. Go back to them, every single one of you. Go back to them. Check and reference. My words, don't take them for granted. Go back to the book and the authentic sunnah. Check and reference. Not that we mistrust each other. We love each other. But still, I am not infallible and no one is after the Anbiya. Go check people's words. Hold them accountable. Make them stand corrected. Raise the bar on yourself and on everybody else. That's the only way we can revive the ummah. That was the message of Al-Hussein. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullah.
تبسم تبسم وخل الهموم وخل الغموم وخل الضجر